wanna put my belly on your back.
Has some huge problems.
We better win this 1,500 today.
42 years old. They were once the kids who stole the spotlight from Eddie Murphy, making the whole world burst into laughter in The Nutty Professor. And now they've vanished. No scandals, no farewell, only death rumors and old images mocked on social media. From childhood legends to names erased by Hollywood. From roaring cheers to a terrifying silence. Behind the laughter lie illness, depression, and secrets never revealed. At 42, the tragedy of the Mixon Twins is not only heartbreaking, it is shocking beyond imagination. The question is, what really happened to them? And why does Hollywood want you to forget it all? From the legendary dinner table to Hollywood stardom. Oxnard, California, a small city where the golden sun stretches across the streets, where kids often dream of becoming basketball players or football stars. But in the early 1980s, two boys dreamed of something else: to stand in front of the camera and make the whole world laugh. They were Jared Mixon, born May 24, 1981, and his younger brother Jamal Mixon, born June 17, 1983. Neither of them could have imagined that just over a decade later, they would become two of the most recognizable faces in the history of Hollywood comedy. And it all began with one woman, their mother. She was the one who held their hands, took them to auditions, waited patiently for hours in cramped hallways, and never stopped believing her sons had something special. One day, upon hearing that director Tom Shadyac was looking for a chubby and funny kid for a project with Eddie Murphy, she didn't hesitate. "You're chubby. This is your chance," she told Jamal. And so they went. Jamal took a bite of cake, giggled, and Eddie Murphy instantly recognized the chemistry. Just days later, Jamal Mixon's name was cemented in film history with the role of Ernie Clump Jr. in The Nutty Professor 1996. That dinner table scene, where Eddie Murphy played every member of the Clump family, quickly became legendary. But if you looked closely, you saw Jamal's mischievous eyes, his radiant smile, and an authenticity almost impossible to fake. He wasn't just a backdrop for Eddie Murphy. He became the youthful soul of the entire scene. And when the grandmother cheered "Hercules, Hercules, Hercules" as Jamal flexed his pudgy arms, audiences around the world were smitten. Jamal was only 13 years old, and Jared. He had started his career a bit earlier in 1994, taking small TV roles before following his brother into Hollywood. Jared didn't have a breakout debut like Jamal, but he quickly made his mark. In 2003, just a few years after Nutty Professor II, The Clumps, 2000, Jared appeared in Old School as Weensy, the oversized comic relief in the frat house. His scene struggling to do pull-ups while shouting "We're going streaking" had audiences roaring. Though brief, Jared carved his name into viewers' memories. From the late 90s into the early 2000s, the Mixon brothers were everywhere. Jamal appeared in the hit sitcom The Parkers from 2000 to 2002 across 6 episodes as Kim Parker's boyfriend. He also showed up in Moshe, Malcolm and Eddie and reunited with Eddie Murphy in Nutty Professor II, The Clumps. Jared expanded his reach from TV series like Boston Public and Judging Amy to Scary Movie 4 2006, where his physical comedy stood out. Together, they became the chubby duo who defined comedy culture at the time. What made them special was not just their appearance, but their energy. They didn't just act to make audiences laugh. They lived in every line, every glance, every clumsy yet charming gesture. It was a natural charisma you couldn't learn in school. The scene of them demolishing the dinner table in The Nutty Professor is still clipped and shared online today. Every time it resurfaces, thousands of comments pour in. These kids were hilarious. Where are they now? Between 1996 and 2005, their careers bloomed. Jamal starred in House Party 4 2001, The Cookout 2004, and Gridiron Gang 2006, while Jared kept appearing in films and sitcoms of all sizes. They weren't A-list stars, but whenever they appeared, they brought the laughs. In Hollywood, they were known as scene stealers, performers who could grab the spotlight in just seconds. For fans, Jamal and Jared became part of their childhood. The 90s generation grew up with them, remembering every line, every awkward shake of the head, every simple yet unforgettable gag. People often said if Eddie Murphy was the star, then the Mixon brothers were the sparks that lit up the room. No one could forget them, even if they didn't remember their names. But behind the fame, the rapid rise carried pressure. Their mother, who had knocked on every casting door, knew better than anyone that Hollywood is never kind to children. Each new role meant another trial, another demand to prove themselves. And for two boys with round figures, their careers were quickly branded as the fat, funny kids. Yet at first, no one thought about that. All the audience saw was laughter. After the premiere of The Nutty Professor, viewers left the theater still buzzing about the Hercules kid for days. In 1996, the Los Angeles Times wrote that the dinner table scene is one of the funniest moments in PG-13 film history, and young Jamal Mixon is the centerpiece. When Jared appeared in Old School Entertainment, Weekly described him as one of the most memorable supporting characters, delivering more laughs than some of the leads. Such praise was enough for any actor to believe the future was wide open, and indeed, at that moment, nothing seemed to stand in their way. The Mixon brothers symbolized a kind of family comedy, simple, relatable, and instantly heartwarming. They didn't need elaborate scripts. Just a frown, an awkward smile, or a sneaky bite at the dinner table was enough to make the whole world laugh. But as with every Hollywood story, the spotlight shines brightest at the beginning, and behind it, shadows wait. Their early careers were a sweet dream, but every dream must end. For Jamal and Jared Mixon, the bell tolled soon after they reached the peak, marking the start of a chain of tragedies neither of them ever saw coming. The Hollywood spiral and the trap of typecasting. After the roaring laughter and record-breaking box office numbers, the question emerged: could they escape the image of the funny fat kid? And from there, the brutal spiral of typecasting began to tighten. Hollywood has always needed recognizable archetypes. The bigger, rounder older brother was automatically cast as the clumsy big guy. The smaller, mischievous younger brother became the chubby kid who eats too much and makes people laugh with awkwardness. It was an easy formula, but one repeated endlessly. Jamal stepped onto the screen, audiences laughed. Jared appeared, audiences laughed. No matter the script, they were never allowed beyond that boundary of laughter. In The Parkers 2000-2002, Jamal played a chubby, goofy, lovable boyfriend. Exactly what audiences expected. In Moshe, once again, he was tied to silly, naive moments. Jared landed Weensy in Old School 2003, a brief role but forever remembered for his awkward, shirtless antics. These roles made them stand out but also locked every other door. They were boxed in. The cruelty was this: Hollywood loved the laughter they brought but never respected them as artists. At every new audition, the comment echoed, "We need someone like the kid from The Nutty Professor." It wasn't praise, it was a sentence. With every opportunity came the same narrow frame, impossible to break. Jamal once admitted in a rare interview, "I know I can do more than that, but people only see a chubby kid who makes jokes, nothing more." His words exposed the harsh truth talent buried beneath appearance. Jared faced the same. Even when he appeared in Boston Public Judging Amy or Scary Movie 4, audiences still remembered him only as the goofy fat guy. Typecasting was a trap with no escape. The more famous they became, the tighter it gripped. The more they made people laugh, the more they were bound by it. Eventually, the laughter became chains. Audiences demanded repetition. Producers forced them into familiar roles. The result, both Jamal and Jared could not move forward. From 2000 to 2006, they appeared in numerous projects, but all within the same formula. Jamal had House Party 4 2001, The Cookout 2004, Gridiron Gang 2006. Jared had Old School Scary Movie 4 2006, then faded into guest spots. Neither was given the chance to attempt a new role, serious, dramatic, or even villainous. They were reduced to comic tools. Ironically, those very roles sustained them for years. Laughter brought contracts, paychecks, fame, but it also killed the bigger dream, to be recognized as true actors. Behind the press junkets, the red carpets, Jamal and Jared must have asked themselves, are we just a joke to them? Typecasting seeped beyond career into personal life. Wherever they went, people recognized them as the Hercules kid or Weensy. Even as adults, they were treated like the same on-screen characters. The shadow of the past loomed so large it eclipsed the present. And by their 20s, the laughter no longer felt innocent. It became mockery. The spiral peaked when they tried to break free. Jared attempted more diverse roles, but each time audiences still laughed at his body, not his acting. Jamal worked to lose weight, but Hollywood didn't want a different Jamal. Hollywood only wanted the Hercules kid forever. The mismatch drained them, leaving fatigue, disillusionment, and doubt in their careers. By 2006, after Gridiron Gang, Jamal faded from major roles. Jared, too, was left with scattered appearances. The glow of The Nutty Professor became a shadow, beautiful, yet haunting. They had reached their peak at barely over 10 years old, but from that moment on were trapped by their own early success. Hollywood's invisible cruelty. It lifts someone up so fast they can't breathe, then drops them just as quickly. For Jamal and Jared Mixon, that spiral was harsher. They entered too young rows too fast and were locked into a single mold. They became textbook victims of typecasting, a silent disease that kills both careers and souls. And as Hollywood's doors slowly closed, only one option remained to find their own escape. The question was whether they would accept the trap or fight to break it. The answer came in 2013, when both gambled everything on a personal project, white tea. But that too became a fateful turning point, turning laughter into tragedy and brotherhood into a crack that would never fully heal. Destined turns, white tea and the silent collapse. Every tragedy often begins with hope. For the Mixon brothers, that hope was called white tea. It was not just an ordinary independent film. It was a dream of rebirth, a last chance to prove that they could do more than just make people laugh. In 2013, when Hollywood had almost slammed the door shut, Jamal and Jared decided to open a new one for themselves. But they never expected that very door would lead them into a destined turning point where light and darkness collided, leaving behind only a silent collapse. White Tea tells the story of an overweight young man who wants to change his life by drinking a magical tea. It may sound humorous, but beneath it lies a profound message, the dream of transformation of a second chance. It was the mirror reflecting the real lives of Jamal and Jared. Both wanted to escape the shadow of being the fat comic relief, to tell a story about pain and longing hidden beneath a heavy exterior. Jared Mixon took the lead on the project. He handled production, managed finances, and even oversaw promotion. Meanwhile, Jamal focused on the lead role, pouring all his heart into portraying the character with the raw authenticity he had always craved. During filming, they worked themselves to exhaustion. Jared ran around raising funds, negotiating every single dollar. Jamal stayed up nights rehearsing lines, cutting down his meals to embody a man desperately trying to change his appearance. Yet Hollywood did not welcome white tea. Major theaters refused to distribute it. Independent distributors accepted it half-heartedly. When released, the film only screened in a handful of small theaters, ticket sales alarmingly low. Revenue was dismal, not even enough to cover production costs. Their comeback dream turned into a financial nightmare. But the most painful part was not about money. It was the fracture in their brotherhood. Jared, the one who carried the production machine, felt Jamal had not done enough in promotion, refusing to show up alongside him to draw audiences. Jamal, on the other hand, believed Jared had turned him into a tool, shifting all creative burdens onto him while keeping control behind the scenes. Accusations piled up and the distance grew. After White Tea failed, the press remained almost silent. There were no praising interviews, no public criticism either. But that silence was the harshest verdict. They had poured their souls into it only to receive oblivion in return. From that moment, the two paths began to diverge. Jared retreated behind the scenes, focusing on finances, on small-scale productions, slowly drifting away from the spotlight. He found safety in management rather than performance. Jamal chose another path, focusing on his health, losing weight, nurturing dreams of writing scripts, and returning with a new image. But both paths were steep. Jared was consumed by financial pressures, often struggling with debt. Jamal was trapped in transformation, as Hollywood no longer cared about the once little Hercules. The bitterest irony was that White Tea was born to unite the brothers, but in the end, became the blade that split them apart. They never argued publicly, never played back and forth in the press, but the silence between them grew. At press events afterward, they rarely appeared together. On social media, shared images gradually disappeared. Fans began to ask what happened to the Mixon Twins, but no one had the answer. In the independent film world, White Tea is sometimes recalled as a regrettable attempt. It carried a touching message but lacked funding, lacked a distribution system, and most importantly, lacked Hollywood's support. It was like a seed sown in barren soil, buried before it could sprout. For Jamal and Jared, that failure was not just the end of a project, but the beginning of years of silence. They never publicly admitted the rift, but keen audiences could see it clearly. The once inseparable twins were now walking two roads that would never run parallel again. The pain lay not in career, but in brotherhood. Growing up together, entering Hollywood together, enduring both applause and ridicule together, one would think they would remain unshakable. But in the end, the very dream they trusted completely tore everything apart. If the Nutty Professor was the birth of their laughter, then white tea was the death knell of their golden era. One chose a turn to survive. The other chose transformation to rediscover himself. And between them was a vast emptiness, the void of a once indestructible brotherhood now shattered in silence. White Tea was not just a failed film. It was a symbol of Hollywood's fragile dreams. It showed that once the lights go out, those who once made the world laugh until it cried could also collapse quietly. And for Jamal and Jared Mixon, 2013 was not just a career milestone, but the year they officially lost each other. The tragedy of HealthMind and social media. The lights had gone out. The laughter had fallen silent. When the door of White Tea closed, Jamal and Jared Mixon entered an entirely different chapter of their lives, not one of glory, but of darkness. And that darkness came not only from Hollywood, but from their own bodies, their minds, and the frenzied virtual world outside. Jared was the first to suffer. Weight had once been the brand of the Mixon brothers, but year by year, it became a burden. As he entered his 30s, Jared began experiencing unusual headaches, irregular heartbeats, and stark warnings from doctors. If you don't change, you'll live the rest of your life with type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. For someone who once brought laughter to the screen sitting in a clinic while hearing doctors list off complications, kidney failure, heart disease, even stroke was a shock too heavy to bear. At the same time, Jamal was also battling his own body. He had tried to lose weight to escape the shadow of being the little Hercules, but whenever he appeared, audiences would mutter, "Is he even fatter than before, or he's done for?" Every seemingly harmless comment on social media was like a knife cutting into his fragile pride. Jamal began avoiding public appearances, dodging cameras, even skipping industry gatherings. He withdrew into himself, left only with four walls and his obsession with weight. But the tragedy didn't stop there. The internet, once the place that preserved audiences' childhood memories of the Mixon brothers, turned into a furnace of ridicule. Dinner table scenes from The Nutty Professor were clipped with mocking captions, turning them into memes for cheap laughs. Old photos were dug up and compared to the present, plastered with cruel comments. Look at them, from Hollywood stars to failures. For the generation that grew up with them, it was just a joke. But for the brothers themselves, it was an unhealing wound. The cruelty of the internet reached its peak with a death rumor. In the late 2010s, some blogs spread news that Jared Mixon had died from diabetes complications. The story spread rapidly on Facebook, Twitter, and then to YouTube with RIP Jared Mixon videos. Fans were shocked, sending condolences, even making tribute videos. But the truth was, Jared was still alive, and he had to watch people remember him while he sat silently in his small apartment, not even sure what was happening. It wasn't just a slap in the face, it was a living funeral. Jamal fared no better. Between 2015 and 2017, when he tried to return with a few small roles, the media branded him with the dreaded label, "Where Are They Now?" Articles about him focused not on his talent, but on his declining appearance and dwindling career. Every comeback attempt was drowned in cruel comparisons to his golden childhood. "No one wants to see a fallen Hercules," one blog wrote, driving Jamal to the point of deleting all his social media accounts. The mental pressure only mounted. Jared fell into depression, relying on sedatives just to sleep. In a small interview, he once admitted that there were nights he lay in bed thinking everything would be easier if he didn't wake up the next morning. Jamal, too, sank into despair, needing his family to pull him out of panic attacks. The brothers, who had once been each other's anchor, were now silent, each battling the darkness in their own way. The bitter truth was, this audiences still remembered them, but not in the way they had hoped. The dinner scene in The Nutty Professor continued to go viral, and every time it resurfaced, it dragged along questions: what happened to these boys? But instead of pride, Jamal and Jared felt only heaviness. To them, that memory was like a chain binding them to the past, keeping them from breaking free to become someone else. Meanwhile, finances dwindled. Jared, with a few small production projects, managed only a modest living. Jamal, though he tried to write scripts, sold almost nothing. By 2025, Jared's net worth was estimated at around $600,000, while Jamal's was about $400,000, painfully modest numbers for men who had once been icons. The harshest thing about Hollywood is not when it abandons you, but when it turns you into a joke. Jared and Jamal knew this better than anyone. One was battling weight and illness. The other struggled against depression and public ridicule. And between them stood a merciless social media world. People often think tragedy comes from scandals, from explosive downfalls. But for the Mixon twins, tragedy came quietly. No lawsuits, no drugs, no sex scandals, only illness, depression, and the cruelty of being forgotten. It was silent but relentless, gnawing at them day by day, hour by hour. At 42, looking back, it is clear Jamal and Jared Mixon are no longer the boys who once made theaters roar with laughter. They are men carrying invisible scars of bodies that betrayed them, of minds trapped in despair, and of a digital world ready to crush anyone. Oblivion and the harsh numbers. Hollywood has a way of killing careers without scandal or accident. It is simply oblivion. And Jamal and Jared Mixon are the clearest proof of that cruelty. They once made millions laugh, but then one day when the lights went out and scripts stopped coming, they vanished from the screen. No one noticed. No one asked. Until their names resurfaced, not on the red carpet, but in the cold headlines. Where are they now? After 2017, Jamal was hardly seen on the big screen again. His last appearance was in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, just a minor role, fleeting and gone. Jared had gone quiet even earlier, since Scary Movie 4 2006 and a few small television projects. From familiar faces, they became names buried in the list of no longer active supporting actors. And that was the most dreadful tragedy, the silence that swallowed them without explanation. Audiences, always quick to forget, let them drift into the past. Only when old clips from The Nutty Professor went viral on social media did people pause. Oh, what happened to those boys? But searches yielded only scattered vague details. No new projects, no interviews, no comeback. Just a few lines about health struggles, financial hardship, and baseless rumors. Finances, this was where oblivion became the harshest. By 2025, Jared's estimated net worth was around $600,000. Jamal's was even lower, about $400,000. For ordinary people, those figures might be a dream. But in Hollywood, they are nothing. A supporting role in a mid-level film could bring in a few $100,000. A brand deal with even a B-list star could easily surpass that. Yet for the brothers, once called childhood memory makers, these modest sums were the entire outcome of nearly 3 decades. Consider the comparison. Eddie Murphy, who starred with them in The Nutty Professor today, has a net worth of $200 million. Kevin Hart, a comedian from their era, now reaches $450 million. Even lesser-known supporting actors from early 2000s sitcoms have millions to their names thanks to continuous careers. Meanwhile, the Mixon twins were left with scraps, nowhere near financial security. The cruelty lies not just in the money, but in the message it carries. Hollywood drained them dry, then abandoned them without reward. Years of youth, countless audience memories tied to them, and in the end, the conversion value was just a few $100,000. A cold number brutally reflecting the injustice of the entertainment industry. Not only finances, their artistic legacy was erased in much the same way. When people list comedians of the 1990s and 2000s, rarely does anyone mention the Mixon twins. They were overshadowed by bigger names or by those who managed to pivot their careers. The few articles that recall them stop at nostalgia, never granting them recognition as true artists. And that pain cut deeper than poverty, the pain of being treated as if they never existed. The cruelty of oblivion is that it creeps in slowly, bit by bit, without warning. Today, you are the child hailed by the world. Tomorrow, you are just a viral YouTube clip with shallow comments. Remember these kids? For Jamal and Jared, that process stretched across 2 decades, and by 42, they fully understood they were no longer stars, just memories. When Hollywood forgot them, even the doors of return gradually closed. A 40-year-old actor with no major roles for years, lacking the looks, and chained by typecasting, how could he ever be cast in a new project? This reality silenced every comeback attempt. Jamal wrote scripts, but no producer cared. Jared worked on a few small productions, but none made a mark. And so they accepted the truth: they had been forgotten. The greatest tragedy of oblivion is not that no one mentions you anymore. The tragedy is that people only remember your old self, the chubby comic kid of 1996, while completely denying the adult you have become in 2025. It is the denial of existence itself. And for the Mixon brothers, that was the deepest, most lingering pain. When the laughter fades, what legacy remains? Some Hollywood stories end with scandal, others with sudden death. But the journey of Jamal and Jared Mixon ended in silence. Yet silence does not mean disappearance. Even today, when audiences replay the legendary dinner table scene in The Nutty Professor 1996, laughter still erupts. That is the clearest proof their legacy never truly died. That scene, Eddie Murphy embodying the entire Clump family, Jamal sitting there with a mischievous look waving his arms to show off his muscles, and Jared completing the comedic symphony, went far beyond a single film. It became part of the collective memory of the 1990s generation. Millions of children from that time are now adults with kids of their own, still sharing the clip with comments like, "This was real childhood." That is the kind of legacy that cannot be measured in money or awards. It lives in memory, in emotion, in bursts of innocent laughter. But legacy also leaves behind hard lessons, not only for the Mixon twins, but for anyone stepping into Hollywood. Lesson 1. Early success never guarantees the future. Jamal and Jared peaked at just over 10 years old, but that very peak made them prisoners of a single image. Lesson 2. Family can be strength, but it can also be the harshest test. White tea was created to unite them, but it left behind cracks that never healed. Lesson 3. A career in entertainment requires not just talent but strategy, relationships, and the ability to reinvent oneself, things the brothers never had time to prepare for. Yet amid tragedy, a ray of hope still shines. After years of battling weight and insecurity, Jamal finally found a new direction. He lost weight, began writing scripts, and discovered joy in creating rather than merely performing. Hollywood may no longer be waiting for him, but he is preparing for the day he might return not as little Hercules, but as a writer and independent creator. As for Jared, though crushed by death rumors and depression, he clung to the backstage. He learned financial management, joined small production projects, and most importantly, built a quiet life far from chaos. For someone once chewed up by Hollywood, finding balance in his personal life was itself a victory. Above all, Jamal and Jared Mixon are still alive. It may sound simple, but in a world where many child stars spiral into addiction, bankruptcy, or even death, surviving 4 decades is proof of resilience. They may no longer have the lights or applause, but they still have family-loyal fans and indestructible memories. And sometimes that is the most valuable thing. The legacy of the Mixon twins is also a reminder to audiences that behind every laugh on screen, there may be real tears off screen. That the children who brought us joy yesterday might be struggling with pain today. And that before judging or mocking someone on social media, we should remember they are human too, with emotions and wounds. At 42, Jamal and Jared Mixon still carry tragedy, oblivion, illness, depression, and painfully modest finances. But hope also exists. Jamal healthier, hunched over scripts. Jared calm, holding on with production. They no longer chase the spotlight, but have learned to live with themselves. And perhaps one day they will return not as children exploited by Hollywood, but as grown artists telling their own true stories. Ultimately, the story of the Mixon twins is a tragedy, but not one meant only for mourning. It is a warning against glamorous dreams, a mirror reflecting the cruelty of entertainment and proof that even in darkness people can still find light. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy they leave behind, not the laughter in films, but the strength to endure after the laughter has gone silent. You've just heard the tragic journey of the Mixon twins, from legendary laughter to the darkness of oblivion. And there are many more shocking stories waiting to be told. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss out. In your opinion, which part of their tragedy is the most heartbreaking? Leave a comment below.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.